Hello. My name is Adarin Grady, Captain, Badge 4427, and last month, my own mother tried to frame me for theft in a diamond store, while my brother live-streamed it like a game show. And that wasn't even the worst part. The screen of my phone glowed against the metal locker, its reflection cutting through the dull light of the precinct dressing room. I was buttoning my uniform when a notification popped up, my brother Lucan's post. I almost ignored it. Then the words caught me. 3 generations of the Grady legacy. A photo. My father, beaming beneath white string lights. My mother, hand on his arm. Cousins, uncles, friends I hadn't seen in years. A banner behind them read, Happy 70th, Grady the Great. Everyone was there. Everyone but me. There was even an empty chair near the center, draped in a jacket that looked a lot like mine. For a second, I thought maybe it was an old photo. Maybe I just missed the invite by mistake. But the caption read, Tonight was perfect. My throat tightened. The air in the locker room felt heavier. Someone in the hallway laughed, a sound too alive, too distant. I pressed my thumb against the phone until the screen dimmed. They hadn't forgotten me. They had chosen not to remember. I fixed my badge on my chest, the metal cold against my skin. Every movement felt mechanical. Zip, tuck, breathe. That's what the job trained me to do. Control the tremor, master the silence. Outside, the evening was gray and crisp, the kind of Tacoma spring that promised rain but never followed through. I drove to the precinct in silence, listening only to the rhythm of my breath and the hum of tires on wet asphalt. By the time I reached the auditorium, my face was ready, professional, unreadable. The room shimmered with camera flashes and the smell of polished floors. Chief Marston stood at the podium, smiling with his politician's warmth. Captain Adarin Grady, he announced, a woman who defines integrity and discipline. Applause rose. My name echoed through the room, bouncing off the marble walls. For a heartbeat, it felt like pride. Then I saw her, my mother, Valora. She glided to the stage in her pearls and pastel suit, moving like she belonged under every light. The chief looked startled, but she gave him that disarming smile, the one that got her through every social gate. She took the microphone. I never imagined she'd become a cop, she said, her voice honeyed, amused. She was always too quiet. Marriage would fix that. Laughter rippled through the audience. Someone clapped nervously. My spine stiffened. My jaw ached from holding still. She kept talking. Stories about how I once dressed up in my father's boots, how I cried when I broke a nail, how serious I always looked. It wasn't cruelty in her tone. It was performance. She had turned me into entertainment. I smiled for the cameras because that's what daughters do when their mothers rewrite their story in public. They stay still. They survive it quietly. When the ceremony ended, she hugged me in front of the crowd, her perfume sharp and floral. Her breath brushed my ear. You should have told me about the event, she whispered. I don't like surprises. I stepped back, blinking against the flashbulbs. You mean like the one you threw last night? I said softly. She froze for half a second, then smiled wider. You saw that? Oh, it was just family. Right, I said. Just family. That night, the building emptied slowly. The echo of laughter and clicking heels faded down the hall. I stood alone in the corridor, the overhead lights humming. My reflection in the glass door looked foreign. Same uniform, same face, but the eyes of someone else entirely. I scrolled through the photos again. My brother Lucan grinning beside our parents. My father raising a glass. My name nowhere in the comments. No tag. No mention. Just the Grady legacy. The phone buzzed again. Another notification. Group chat. The real family. Message preview. We pulled it off perfectly today. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Anger meant I still cared about belonging. What I felt was colder. Something like understanding. They hadn't forgotten my name. They had erased it on purpose. The hallway clock ticked softly, marking the seconds between who I had been and who I was about to become. My name didn't just vanish from the list. They never planned for me to exist in the first place. The message from Unia blinked beneath the others, barely a breath between it and the one above it. We pulled it off perfectly today. I read it twice. Then I tapped the message from Unia. Auntie D, I don't believe what they said about you. It landed softer than it should have. And yet, the ache it stirred was louder than grief. I closed my phone without responding, but her words lingered in the silence like a child's hand still reaching for warmth. I didn't deserve her loyalty, not after how many times I stood still when I should have spoken, how many times I watched them rewrite history while I let them hold the pen. The house was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that reminded you a place wasn't being lived in, just occupied. I hadn't turned the lights on. I didn't need to. The glow from the kitchen microwave clock was enough to remind me that I hadn't eaten. The leftovers still sat in the microwave, cold now. Probably just as well. I wasn't hungry. Not for food. I was hungry for the truth. I sat on the edge of the couch, phone in hand, thumb scrolling through the photos from the party. Valora beaming, Lucan pouring wine, Saphira kissing the top of Unia's head. They looked like the kind of family you put in a frame. And that was the trick of it, wasn't it? They always knew how to frame things. Swipe. The cake with 3 layers. White, gold, navy. My father's favorites. He had once said I was his pride and joy. Funny how he hadn't needed me there to feel proud. Swipe. The caption under one photo. So grateful to have everyone under one roof tonight. Everyone. I paused, the word pressing against my chest like a seatbelt too tight in a crash. Then the screen flashed again. New message. Lucan renamed the group. The real family. I blinked. Stared. I wasn't in the group. I had never been in it. But now it had a name. An official one. Like an office door I'd never be allowed to open. I opened the chat anyway. At least the preview I could still see. Photos, videos, inside jokes. One from Saphira. Unia was so brave reading that poem last night. She gets it from you, Luke. One from Mom. Can't wait to see what Lucan does for Father's Day. He always makes it so special. One from Dad. She still doesn't know? Perfect. Let's keep it that way. I swallowed the taste of metal. My own name never once appeared. The next moment arrived in my chest, not on the screen. A slow thawing of something I hadn't realized was frozen. This wasn't about one dinner, or one party, or one photo. This was about subtraction. How many times had I stepped aside so Lucan could be centered? How many times had I been told, he needs it more, or don't embarrass him in front of others? It had always been about adding him by subtracting me. A soft buzz interrupted the stillness. A notification from Facebook this time. Valora had posted a photo, her holding a certificate. Caption. So touched by my son's generosity, Lucan surprised me with a savings bond to help with the house repairs. Raised him right. I didn't even blink, because I recognized the paper. It was the same bond I'd opened in my name. I'd deposited the funds myself. I had written the note in the corner. For home, not for show. She had taken my name off it, handed it to Lucan, and he'd smiled for the camera. I set the phone down, face down this time. I didn't want to see it anymore. But the room was too quiet now. It echoed with things I hadn't said. A year ago, Unia had messaged me late at night. She was scared. Tuition had gone up. Lucan was too busy. And Valora had said, just give her time. So I wired the money that morning. No questions. When I saw the photos later that week, Lucan posing with Unia at her college, holding the check, I didn't say anything. Valora called later. Let your brother have this one, she had said. You don't need the spotlight. No, I hadn't. But now I wondered if stepping out of it for so long had made me forget I was ever allowed in it to begin with. The phone buzzed again. Unia again. No words this time. Just a picture. It was an old photo of us. Unia at age 5, clinging to my arm while I was in uniform, half smiling. She'd written one sentence under it. You always showed up, even when they didn't let you. I didn't cry. I hadn't earned that yet, but I whispered something I hadn't said in years. Thank you. I stared at the image until the screen dimmed. It wasn't the group chat that stung. It was the fact that even betrayal had its favorites, and I was never one of them. The silence didn't break when I woke up. It stretched across my walls like old wallpaper, thin, familiar, impossible to ignore. The cold light of morning filtered through the half-open blinds. My uniform hung on the back of the door, but I had no intention of wearing it today. Not because of shame, but because I didn't want to be mistaken for someone on duty, for someone still choosing to serve people who couldn't see me. I needed to breathe on my own terms. Unia's photo sat on my kitchen table, the one she sent the night before. Me in uniform. Her at 5 years old, eyes wide with admiration, like I was someone she believed in. That version of me felt so far away, like a photograph taken by someone else's hands. I glanced at the time. I had promised myself I'd get something special for her upcoming birthday. Something she wouldn't expect. Something just from me. The boutique wasn't far. Upscale. Too bright. With those white walls that made even breathing feel expensive. I hadn't been in that store since I made captain. I remembered the manager's side glance back then. The quick scan of my jacket. The polite suspicion wrapped in a tight-lipped smile. I thought my badge would change that. I was wrong. I stepped inside anyway. Soft jazz floated from the ceiling speakers. The scent of lavender and metal hung in the air. Luxury packaged for mass consumption. A glass case near the back held charm bracelets. Silver, delicate, detailed. The kind of thing Unia would trace her fingers over for hours before choosing one. I walked toward it, already hearing the quiet tap of heels behind me. Can I help you? The clerk's voice was smooth, rehearsed. Before I could answer, another voice cut in. She's just browsing, Valora said, appearing beside me with that smile she wore like jewelry. She doesn't have a card. The clerk's smile dimmed, lips tightening at the edges. The air shifted. I could feel it in the way her tone changed, less patient, less helpful. My mother turned to me. Thought I'd find you here, she said, as if this were her stage and I was interrupting. Figured you'd go for something shiny. That was always your distraction. I opened my mouth, closed it. My badge was in my coat pocket, my credit card in my wallet, but my voice, it stayed stuck, somewhere deep, somewhere tired. I picked up a bracelet, held it to the light. The clerk stepped forward, slower now, watching me like I might pocket it. My fingers began to tremble. I placed it back down, careful not to make a sound. Valora smiled. See? Told you. Just looking. I left before my hands betrayed me. The air outside hit me like a wall. I didn't exhale until I reached my car. I sat there, engine off, fingers gripping the wheel. My throat burned, but no words came. Just memory. Years ago, she'd done the same thing in a dress store. I was 17, had saved for months to buy my own prom dress. Valora came with me. She told the manager I was just trying things on to feel fancy. They believed her. Later that night, she said, "You don't want people thinking you're too ambitious. Men don't like that." I started shrinking that day, and I hadn't stopped. Dinner at the house was quiet at first. Grady sat at the head of the table, knife and fork aligned perfectly, as if waiting for a blessing that would never come. Lucan tapped on his laptop. "I've been thinking," he said, glancing around the table, "about the land." Valora raised her eyebrows. "Go on, son. We could divide it up. Make use of it. I've already spoken with someone about development." I looked at him. "Shouldn't we all have a say in that?" He shrugged. "You don't live here anymore, Red. You're not exactly rooted." Red, the nickname from childhood, tied to my rust-colored curls and the temper they said came with it. But that name meant something else now. It was a leash she thought still fit. Grady didn't look up from his plate. "Lucan has a point," he muttered. "You left. Long time ago." Valora sipped her wine, like she'd heard something profound. I placed my napkin down slowly, carefully. "I didn't leave. I built a life. A badge. A name." Lucan chuckled, leaning back. "You built a job. That's not the same." I wanted to say more, but I didn't. Sometimes silence is the only thing loud enough to remind them what they don't get to take from you. Driving home, the lights of the city blurred like a watercolor someone had wiped their hand across too soon. I passed the billboard outside the boutique. The new ad read, "Every memory deserves to shine." I almost laughed. Some memories don't shine. Some cut. Quietly, deeply, permanently. The words that cut deepest never needed to be shouted. They were whispered, then left to rot in silence. I knew I shouldn't have gone to the hospital, but guilt is louder than logic, and when the call came, I didn't argue with it. I just drove. The roads shimmered under a thin veil of rain, not the heavy kind that washes things away, but the soft, persistent kind that clings. Like memory, like resentment. My wipers brushed across the windshield in tired rhythm as my mind replayed every conversation I should have had but didn't. Why now? Why me? Tacoma General hadn't changed. The walls still wore that pale, agreeable beige. The scent of disinfectant still clung to every breath. But something felt colder this time, less welcoming. Like even the building knew I didn't belong here anymore. At the front desk, the woman barely glanced up. "Room 307, she said, tapping her keyboard. "She's stable. Her son's not here yet." Her son. I was already invisible. The hallway stretched long and humming, fluorescent lights flickering in their usual, anxious way. My shoes echoed against the floor. Every step a reminder that I was walking straight into the middle of something I'd long ago stepped out of. Room 307. The door gave a soft creak. Inside, Valora lay against stiff white sheets, her makeup too perfect for someone who'd just collapsed. Her hands were folded like a mannequin's, expression neutral, almost smug in its serenity. Her eyes opened slowly. "You came," she said. "I didn't sit yet. They said you fell. A dizzy spell." Her voice held its usual brush-off, as though health scares were just minor scheduling inconveniences. Nothing to fuss over. I finally lowered myself into the vinyl chair beside the bed. It groaned under my weight, like it didn't want to hold either of us. I'll stay until someone else gets here, I said. You don't need to. I know. We sat in silence. A nurse entered a moment later, clipboard in hand. Hi there, just confirming records. Emergency contact still the same. Valora didn't hesitate. Lucan Grady, my son. The nurse nodded, jotted a note, didn't look at me. She's just visiting, Valora added, softly, almost sweetly, like a joke shared between strangers. The nurse's smile wavered. She excused herself quietly. Just visiting. The words didn't hurt. They just settled, like dust on forgotten picture frames, like facts finally laid bare. She's just visiting. I turned back to Valora. Her gaze was already on the window. You look tired, she offered. Still working too much. It's steady. She nodded like she understood, but she didn't ask about the promotion, or the award, or the keynote I gave last week in front of 200 people with my name, my full name, on the banner behind me. I spoke to Lucan this morning, she added, her voice brightening. He's planning something lovely for Father's Day. He always remembers things like that. I nodded, jaw tight. Saphira's baby shower was beautiful. That girl knows how to host. I'm glad you enjoyed it. You could have come. No invitation. Must have been an oversight. I said nothing. Oversight was a kind word for what they did. Intentional silence dressed in accidental clothing. They worry about you, she said after a beat. Being so alone. I'm not alone. She looked at me for the first time in minutes, her eyes sharp. You're not surrounded either. I stood. I'll let you rest. I made it halfway to the door before her voice chased me. You don't have to carry everything by yourself, you know. Just to prove that you can. I didn't turn around. My hand gripped the door handle. I stopped needing to prove anything a long time ago. The car felt colder than the hospital. My fingers trembled slightly as I started the engine. Not from sadness. Not quite anger either. Something in between. A tremor left behind after an earthquake. Long after everyone else had gone back to bed. My phone buzzed in the passenger seat. Unia. They told me not to call you Auntie D anymore. Said it confuses people. Another message followed. Can I still call you that? Even if they don't like it? I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. I didn't answer, because answering meant giving her something they might take away. And I couldn't give her another name only for them to erase it, because names were more than names. They were positions. They were claims. They were the quiet acknowledgments that someone sees you, knows you, remembers the place you once stood. And I was tired of being remembered as the guest in rooms I used to live in. I drove the long way home. Let the rain smear every street lamp into a blur. Let the headlights stretch like ghosts across the windshield. I kept the radio off. The quiet was better than hearing another voice that didn't belong to me. When I pulled into the driveway, I didn't get out. I sat there, engine idling, hands still gripping the wheel like it was the only thing keeping me tethered. I thought about how many times I'd shown up first, how many times I'd stayed until the end, how often I'd patched the gaps, filled the silences, swallowed the insults, and still arrived the next morning with a smile and something warm in a paper bag. But it had never been enough to rewrite their version of me, because they'd already done it. Long ago, they'd cast me as a distant cousin, a helper, the background singer who doesn't get a solo. They were just waiting for me to accept it. Just visiting. The words echoed again. Not like an insult, but like a fact. A label affixed to a package no one wanted to open. I stepped out of the car and into the drizzle. The night felt heavier now. Not because of what was said, but because of everything that never needed to be. And as I stood there, the wind nudging against my coat, I made a decision. I wasn't going back to room 307. Not tomorrow. Not ever. The invitation arrived 2 weeks later. It came in a thick cream-colored envelope. No return address, no card. Just a folded note with gold lettering. We'd love for you to help the family shine on this special day. Inside was a dress. Soft beige. Modest neckline. Perfectly pressed. No tag. No brand. No question of size either. They knew me that well. Or maybe they just assumed I hadn't changed. I held it up against the light. The fabric caught it. Shimmered faintly. Expensive enough to suggest grace, but plain enough to suggest purpose. It took me a moment to realize what the message implied. They didn't want me to attend the wedding. They wanted me to serve it. I pressed the dress to my chest, closed my eyes, and let the silence stretch. It didn't hurt, not at first. It felt like déjà vu, the familiar weight of exclusion disguised as an invitation. The event hall gleamed like a magazine spread, gold chandeliers, white roses, chairs wrapped in satin bows. Classical music filled the air, carefully chosen to impress, without offending. People smiled like they'd been rehearsing all morning. Cameras flashed. The Grady family had always known how to look perfect under borrowed light. When I arrived, Valora greeted me with that sugar-sweet voice that could slice glass. "Oh good, you made it," she said, eyes sweeping over me. "Doesn't the dress fit just right?" "Fits like it was made for me," I said quietly. She smiled wider. That was all she said. I walked into the hall, clutching my small purse. The air smelled like champagne and old money. A few guests nodded politely as I passed. Some didn't recognize me. Then I noticed it, the staff. Every server wore beige. The same tone, the same cut, the same soft sheen. For a split second, I couldn't move. One of them brushed past me, tray of flutes in hand. She smiled politely. "Can you grab more champagne for table 3? She asked, already turning away. I didn't correct her. I didn't even flinch. Instead, I nodded slightly, stepped aside, and walked toward the edge of the room. There's a strange kind of power in invisibility. You learn to listen when no one expects you to. From my corner, I watched Lucan hold court at the head table, laughing louder than everyone else. Saphira's laughter followed his, perfectly timed, like they practiced it. My father sat proudly beside them, while Valora leaned in close, whispering into his ear with the same smile she'd used all her life. The one that meant look how well we're doing without her. I stood quietly, slowly, silently. Halfway through the evening, Saphira took the stage. Her heels clicked against the hardwood, echoing through the room. She tapped the mic. "Can everyone hear me?" The crowd hushed. She smiled, one hand resting on her belly, radiant under the spotlight. "Before we toast to family," she began, "I want to take a moment to talk about the women who make family possible. The ones who lift others quietly, who don't need applause or recognition. The ones who do the hard work in the background so that others can shine." A murmur of approval rippled through the room. Behind her, a slideshow began on a large screen. Photos faded in and out. Valora arranging flowers, Saphira smiling in her new kitchen, Unia playing piano. Then, for one brief second, there was me. A photo of my silhouette in uniform, face blurred by light, No name. No context. Just the outline of someone whose work didn't belong to her anymore. Saphira's voice softened. They never ask for credit. They never need the spotlight. The crowd applauded. I didn't. I couldn't. The words hit like a blade with no edge, silent but deep. I felt my pulse climb, steady, then fade again into the same cold calm that always came when I realized resistance would only feed them. They wanted me quiet. They built entire speeches around it. I left before the toast. Backstage, the air was cooler, quieter. The hum of the crowd felt distant, like wind behind a closed window. I took out my phone, opened the camera, recorded her speech, zoomed in on my blurred outline. Click. Photo. Proof. I whispered to myself, not for strength but for clarity. They taught me not to interrupt. They never taught me what to do when silence becomes complicity. I didn't feel angry. Not yet. Just awake. Valora found me near the exit. Leaving already? She asked, eyebrows arched. It's getting late, I said. She glanced down at the badge in my hand, then back at me. You didn't have to wear that tonight. It's not that kind of event. I slipped it into my coat pocket. You're right, I said. It's not. Her expression flickered, uncertain for the first time in years. Lucan passed by, drink in hand, arm around Saphira. Hey, Red, he said casually. Didn't see you out there. Try not to scare the guests. Saphira laughed too loudly. She's just teasing, Aderin. You know how Luke is. Always joking. I know exactly how he is. I stepped aside, letting them pass. Outside, the night air felt cleaner than it had in months. The sound of traffic hummed from the street, steady, almost comforting. I looked down at my hand. The badge gleamed faintly under the lights of the parking lot. For years, it had meant duty, order, justice. Tonight, it meant something different. Evidence. The last time I wore a badge, it meant justice. This time, it would mean proof. The next morning, I found myself driving downtown without a plan. The streets glistened from last night's rain, the pavement reflecting sunlight like shards of glass. I didn't intend to end up there, but somehow my car stopped in front of the same jewelry store where everything once began. Shiny windows, spotless marble, and that cold kind of quiet that feels rehearsed. I sat there for a long minute, hands still on the wheel. My badge was in my coat pocket again, heavier than usual. It had stopped being protection. It was something else now. A ledger waiting to be balanced. Inside, the air was thick with the perfume of money. Salespeople floated between cases, their smiles sharp, their voices dipped in honey. I wasn't here for revenge. I was here for proof, though I didn't yet know of what. A young clerk recognized me. Captain Grady. Good to see you again, she said brightly. Looking for something special? Before I could answer, I heard Valora's voice behind me. Something for Unia, I think, she said. She always buys gifts she can't afford. My mother stepped beside me, flawless as always. The scent of her perfume, gardenia and control, settled between us. Mom, I said carefully, what are you doing here? Oh, just coincidence, she said with a smile that could have been carved from porcelain. Grady wanted to look at something for Father's Day. I turned, and there he was, my father, still tall, still quiet, but with that same distracted look he always wore when standing too close to her. His hands were folded behind his back, polite, practiced. Lucan appeared a moment later, phone in hand, camera already rolling. Just capturing memories, he said. You know me. I did. and every memory he ever captured had someone else's name attached to it when it resurfaced. I forced a smile. Turn that off, Lucan. He didn't. The clerk opened a case, laying out diamond pendants on a velvet tray. The light caught every surface, every edge, like it was trying to blind me. Valora pointed to one, an elegant piece with a silver chain. Lovely, isn't it? She said, but too delicate for you. You've never been good with fragile things. My father chuckled softly. It wasn't funny, but it was habit. Why don't you show this one to your niece instead? Valora suggested. You're always so generous when it doesn't matter. Something shifted inside me then, small, imperceptible, like the sound of a crack starting. I placed my palms flat on the glass, leaned closer. You didn't invite me here to shop, I said quietly. Valora tilted her head. Oh, sweetheart, don't be dramatic. We just wanted to spend time together. My father reached out, touching my shoulder lightly. Let's not do this here, he murmured. That's when I felt it. A soft hug at the back of my coat. So subtle I might have missed it if not for the faint whisper of fabric against fabric. I turned sharply. Grady's hand was already in his pocket again. Something wrong? He asked, his voice too calm. The moment stretched thin, like glass right before it shatters. I stepped back, heartbeat pounding. What did you just? A sound cut through my words. The alarm. A single, sharp beep that became a blaring siren. Lights flashed above the door. Ma'am. The clerk's voice rose. Please step back. Security rushed forward. Lucan's voice lifted above the chaos, low but perfectly clear. This can't be happening, he said into his phone. My sister's being accused of stealing. She's a cop. The crowd turned. Faces I didn't know, eyes sharp with curiosity and judgment. I could already see the phones being raised, the red dots recording. Valora gasped, hand to her chest. Aderin, after everything we did for you. Every syllable rehearsed, every breath in perfect rhythm. Someone whispered, she's a captain. Another said, no way. The clerk's voice trembled. We just need to check your bag, ma'am. I stood perfectly still. Lucan moved closer, still filming. You should cooperate, he said softly, like a friend pretending to help. Keep filming, I told him. My voice came out steady. Flat. What, he said. Make sure they get the angle right. I opened my coat, handed it to the security guard. The necklace fell out, clattering onto the white marble floor. The sound was deafening. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Valora's voice broke on cue. Why would you do this to us? My father didn't say a word. He looked at the floor, jaw tight. The guard picked up the necklace, holding it up between gloved fingers. Lucan whispered into his phone. Unbelievable. I didn't move, didn't flinch. My hands stayed at my sides, because deep down I understood something I hadn't before. They weren't trying to embarrass me. They were trying to define me. The difference was, this time, I was recording too. The entire scene reflected off the mirrored walls. The perfect crime of humiliation staged under flawless lighting. Hours later, I sat in my car, engine off, rain streaking across the windshield. The video played on my phone, Lucan's stream, the crowd, my mother's gasp, my silence. I watched it twice, then again. Each time it felt less real, like I was reviewing someone else's downfall. I opened a new folder on my laptop, labeled it carefully, Family Case, Phase 1. Under it, I saved every clip, every photo, every document I'd gathered since that night at the award ceremony. I had always believed justice was served in courtrooms, under oaths, in uniforms. But sometimes justice begins in quiet places, behind locked car doors, with trembling hands, and a heart that refuses to break anymore. They wanted to strip me in public. I'd rather undress the truth in court. The sound of the rain on my window woke me before dawn. It had a rhythm, steady and exact, like the pulse of something alive. I couldn't sleep again, so I made coffee instead, black, sharp, the way I used to take it on overnight shifts. The house smelled like paper and fatigue. My desk was still covered in files from the night before. The folder labeled family case. Phase 1 sitting in the center, like a dare. The quiet hummed with something unspoken. It wasn't peace. It was preparation. I opened my laptop. The screen flickered to life, blue light spilling across the dark room. I began scanning the old storage files, employment forms, tax receipts, anything that still had my signature. The longer I looked, the clearer the pattern became. There were copies of documents I'd never signed, pages that bore my name in handwriting, close to mine, but not quite. Then one line made me stop breathing. Loan agreement, Grady Family Renovation Fund. Co-signer, Captain Adrian Grady. Amount, $75,000. I hadn't signed it. The Laura's name sat neatly beside mine, looping and elegant, her penmanship still perfect even in deceit. My hands went still on the keyboard. For a moment, all I could hear was the tick of the clock in the kitchen, marking seconds that suddenly felt heavy. They'd stolen from me again. This time not my reputation, but my name. I whispered out loud, "You forged me." The words tasted bitter, like the truth finally catching up. I checked the dates. The loan had been filed 2 years ago. Payments had been inconsistent, late fees piling up. My credit, my record, had been carrying their debt. I leaned back in the chair, exhaling slowly, quietly, deliberately. If they thought I'd keep letting it slide, they forgot who trained me. My training had taught me to trace lies, not to survive them. I started connecting everything, bank accounts, phone logs, property deeds. And there it was again, my name, echoing through signatures that weren't mine. The Laura's habit of precision had betrayed her. The slanted loops of her Ys, the way she underlined every date. I knew her handwriting the way some people know a scar. They don't need to look twice. I filed screenshots, labeled them one by one. Proof. But I knew I couldn't be the one to release it. By the afternoon, I'd found the right outlet. A journalist named Mel Hart, a local YouTuber who specialized in public corruption. I'd followed her work for years. No gossip, just grit. She was the kind of woman who didn't ask for names, only facts. I wrote an email using a new account. No greeting, no signature. Just, family of police captain uses forged credentials for personal gain. Documents attached. Then I hit send. For the first time in months, I felt my pulse slow down instead of race. 2 weeks later, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The video dropped that morning. Title, How a Cop's Family Tried to Ruin Her and Used Her to Get Rich. It wasn't flashy. No dramatic music. Just clips, screenshots, and quiet narration that cut like glass. This wasn't a mistake, Mel said in the video. This was orchestration. She showed my mother's hospital interview, Lucan's live stream, and the loan documents. One by one, she layered their lies like bricks in a wall too tall to climb over. By noon, it had 10 million views. By evening, 20. The comments were relentless. Imagine doing that to your own child. She's the definition of dignity. I hope they see what she's built without them. I didn't cry. I just watched the numbers climb. Quietly, silently, powerfully. My voicemail had 6 new messages. One from Chief Marston, measured, professional. We'll need to discuss next steps, Captain. Another from a lawyer, offering pro bono counsel. And then Valora's voice. Aderin, she began, her tone smooth but cracking around the edges. You've humiliated us. Enough now. You've made your point. You don't have to destroy the family to feel vindicated. Come fix this. Fix this. Her words were a reflex, not a request. I listened twice. Once for the meaning and once for the fear buried under it. She wasn't worried about me. She was worried about losing control. I deleted the message. Later, a text from Unia arrived. A screenshot of a private family chat. One I'd never been part of. Valora. She's out of control. Someone talk to her. Lucan, Mom, stop posting. It's making things worse. Valora. She's ruined the Grady name. Unia's message underneath read, Mom's freaking out. She said you've destroyed the family name. I typed slowly, then hit send. She's finally called it what she spent her life protecting. That night, I sat by the window, the city lights flickering against the rain-slick glass. The video played softly in the background. Mel's voice calm, matter of fact. People were talking, sharing, debating, but underneath all the noise, I felt something quiet move through me. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't relief. It was release. For years, they told my story for me. Every word twisted to fit their narrative. Every silence used as evidence. They gave me no voice in the story. So I rewrote the ending. The subpoena arrived on a Thursday morning. The envelope was thinner than I expected, almost ordinary, but the weight of it shifted the air in my house. I turned it over once, twice, before opening it. Inside, court summons, hearing date, witness request, Lucan Grady versus State of Washington. For once, it wasn't my name on the defense line. The kettle whistled behind me, shrill and impatient. I poured water into my mug, but I couldn't drink it. My stomach had forgotten how to stay calm. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined. The air smelled like coffee, copy paper, and too many whispered lies. Lucan sat at the defense table, his hair slicked back, suit too polished for sincerity. His lawyer whispered in his ear. He nodded, jaw tight. He didn't look at me. The judge entered, her gavel striking once, the sound clean and final. This court finds the misuse of a minor in digital media constitutes a violation of child protection protocols. She read aloud. Custody of minor Unia Grady is hereby revoked from Lucan Grady. Lucan's hand clenched around his pen until it snapped. I didn't move. He turned then, eyes searching the room until they found mine. For the first time I saw fear there, not anger, not superiority, but raw fear. I held his gaze. No smile, no pity, just acknowledgement. The kind you give to someone who has finally met the truth they built themselves. After the verdict, reporters crowded the courthouse steps. Cameras flashed like lightning. Questions fired like warning shots. Captain Grady, was this personal? I paused before answering. No, I said softly. It was a professional correction. The microphones caught every word. And for once, they didn't twist them. The next morning, I stood before the city council. The wood-paneled chamber felt colder than the courtroom. Less human, more political. The air smelled of ink, paper, and old ambition. Council members sat in their semicircle of judgment, pens poised like weapons. When my turn came, I walked to the podium. The click of my shoes echoed too loudly, reminding me of all the times I'd walked into rooms where I didn't belong. I set down my folder. My hands didn't shake. "I'm not here to clear my name," I began. "I'm here to document what others refused to write down." I pulled out the first page. The forged loan papers, the emails, the false theft report, the live stream transcript, each one a slice of the same blade they'd been sharpening for years. I spoke slowly, deliberately, each word measured like a step on fragile glass. "The gifts that weren't mine," I said. "The photos I never consented to. The lies that became headlines. This isn't vengeance. It's verification." Councilwoman Pierce adjusted her glasses. "Captain Grady, are you accusing your family of coordinated fraud?" "I'm confirming it," I replied. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The gavel struck once. "Order," the chairman said, but his voice was trembling too. When I finished, there was silence, the kind that comes when everyone in the room realizes the story has changed, and the villain has a face they didn't expect. I stepped back, closed my folder, and left without looking behind me. In the lobby, the press waited again. Flashbulbs burst like fireworks, but this time I didn't flinch. "Captain Grady," a reporter called. "What happens next?" "Whatever's necessary," I said. "The truth doesn't retire." A week later, I received an invitation. Unia's school award ceremony. For once, I didn't hesitate. I went. The auditorium was warm, filled with the scent of floor polish and fresh flowers. Children squirmed in their seats. Teachers shushed them softly. When Unia's name was called, she walked up to the stage with a paper in her hand. Her hair was tied back neatly, her dress a soft blue. "This year's essay theme," the principal said, "was my hero." Unia stepped to the microphone. Her voice wavered at first, then grew steady. "My hero wears a badge," she began. "Not because she has to, but because even when her own family tried to erase her, she protected them first." A murmur swept through the crowd. Some people clapped softly. Others turned to look at me. I didn't move. Unia continued. "She taught me that silence isn't the same as peace, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is tell the truth, even when no one wants to hear it." When she finished, the applause rose like a tide. I sat there, hands clasped in my lap, breathing slowly. My eyes didn't burn. My throat didn't close. It was calm, the kind that doesn't need sound to feel loud. Afterward, she ran up to me, arms outstretched. I stood to meet her halfway. "I meant every word," she whispered. "I know," I said. We stood there for a moment, her small hands gripping my coat, the crowd still clapping somewhere behind us. For years, I had worn a name that others defined. For the first time, I heard it spoken the way it was meant to sound. Clear, proud, whole. Captain Aderin Grady. Not the daughter who disappointed. Not the sister who embarrassed. Just me. They took my name and tried to bury it. Turns out, roots grow deeper in darkness. Unia called the next morning. "They're still talking," she said quietly. "But this time, it's about what you survived." I didn't answer right away. I just sat there, on the porch, watching steam curl out of my mug into the soft Washington morning. The sky was pale gold, stretched thin across the tops of the evergreens. Somewhere, a woodpecker tapped rhythmically, a soundtrack to a day that hadn't decided what it wanted to become yet. It wasn't silence like before. It was space. Unia's voice returned, softer. "Some of the parents are sharing my essay. The school posted it on the bulletin board. I saw, I replied. I read the article. She exhaled, the kind of breath that carried more than air. Half laugh, half relief. Do you think it matters? I didn't hesitate. Yes, I said. It matters. The newspaper had picked it up by that afternoon. When Heroes Bleed Quietly, a girl's tribute to her aunt. I stared at the screen, blinking slower than usual, as though my body was still learning how to absorb kindness without flinching. The photo below the headline showed Unia holding her paper, proud but not performative. Her cheeks flushed, her mouth set, her eyes, those stubborn, wide eyes, burning with something old and sacred, something we had both inherited and shaped into something new. The comments flowed beneath the article like a tide. She protected people who didn't protect her. This healed something in me I didn't know was broken. I wish I'd had someone like her growing up. I didn't reply to a single one. I just let them sit there. Small offerings placed gently on the altar of something I had thought was long dead. They warm places I had forgotten were mine. The corners my mother's silence used to echo in. The sharp edges Lucan's laughter used to carve. Now there was something softer. Not loud. Not triumphant. But living. The Laura never called. No apology. No voicemail. Not even a text pretending she meant to check in. But word traveled. In small towns it always does. A woman from church mentioned it casually when we passed each other at the post office. She hasn't been back in weeks, she said, adjusting her scarf, lips pursed like she was chewing on judgment. Says she's not ready to face people. Says she's been misrepresented. I nodded. Didn't explain. Some stories explain themselves eventually. Grady was quieter still. No card. No message. Not even the obligatory, "Hope you're doing okay" text. I hadn't expected one, but that didn't mean it didn't hurt. It's a specific kind of ache, the kind that feels like a bruise surfacing under different light. You don't notice it until something brushes against it, and then suddenly, it's all you can feel. That evening, I found myself back on the porch. The air was thicker now, warm and fragrant with pine and damp soil. The kind of air that tells you life is still happening, even if you've stepped away from it for a while. The cicadas had started up again, their low chorus weaving through the trees like a pulse. My badge rested on the table beside me. I hadn't worn it since that last meeting. It wasn't clipped to a coat, wasn't locked in a drawer. It was just there. Like me. I cupped my tea with both hands, the heat pressing into my palms like reassurance. My fingers circled the rim, slow and thoughtful. I didn't win anything. I whispered into the dusk, but I stopped letting them take from me. And sometimes that's the bigger victory. Not the verdict, not the public redemption arc, but the quiet, unseen reclaiming of what they tried to erase. My name, my story, my place. Later, I wandered into the living room. The walls were still practical. Bare, clean, nothing decorative, just useful. But I opened the drawer near the bookshelf, the one I usually avoided, the one where things from before lived. Inside, under a stack of utility bills and old cards, was a photo. It had been taken right after the school ceremony. Unia and I were standing on the steps. She held her certificate like it was armor. I had one arm slung around her shoulder. We were both smiling, and not the practiced, say cheese kind of smile. It was the kind of smile that comes after fire, after survival, the kind that's earned. I took a nail and hammered it right above my writing desk. Not in the hallway, not tucked away in some frame near old diplomas and forgotten commendations. Right there, In the open, the house was quiet, but not empty. It had held too many ghosts for too long. My father's sharp commands, my mother's silent compliance, the laughter that always carried weight, the holidays where you weren't allowed to cry, even if the air itself was grieving. But now there was space. Space for breath. Space for truth. Space for softness. Peace wasn't something that arrived with fanfare. It didn't come in a letter. It didn't knock on the door or stand outside asking for entry. It just settled. Soft. Unassuming. Persistent. I returned to the porch, watching the trees move gently in the wind. I thought of Unia, her courage, her pen, of David, who never once asked me to soften the truth, of the girl in the comment section who said, "This healed something in me I didn't know was broken." I thought of my own younger self, sitting alone in a locked bathroom with the faucet running to cover the sobs. She would have wanted someone to say, "You're allowed to stop surviving and start living." So maybe that's what I was doing. Finally, sometimes the family we're born into teaches us the hardest lesson. That silence isn't peace, it's surrender. But when you choose truth, even if it means standing alone, that silence becomes strength. What would you have done in my place? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more true story-inspired dramas that hit where it hurts and heal where it matters.